guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm here with an astrology oracle reading for you for the week of December 5th. Now this is my 37th video because I did take off last week, so this would otherwise be my 38th video. But between family being in town for the holiday and also being very ill, the sickest that I've been, since before I even started this series, it just felt right to take the week off. So thank you to everyone who continued to watch my videos, catch up on old ones. I'm seeing that subscriber count going up and I am just so very grateful. So thank you if you've been here helping and supporting to keep my channel active while I took that week off. Let's hope I don't have to do that again, because it did feel very strange to not start my week having this conversation with you all. You will also notice my office has been shifted around a little bit. I need some artwork to put right here on my wall, but yeah, so things have changed a little bit since the last time we spoke, and I am just grateful to be back and to be here for another astrology oracle reading for you. Of course, this is the week of December 5th. Somehow we have entered the last month of the year according to the Gregorian calendar. But even if you do not follow that calendar, we are literally days away from a full moon. But don't worry, I will get there. So as always, I have created my event chart for Dayton, Ohio at 11:11 a.m. And this gives us a 3-degree Aquarius rising, which I am particularly excited about for this chart. We also have a 13-degree Sagittarius sun, and we have a 15-degree Taurus moon. I am here for all these placements right now. You guys know I love Taurus moons. That is like my favorite energy. If you are a Taurus moon, why don't you leave a comment below and share that with me, because I would love to know that. But yeah, Taurus moons are my people. So many people in my life, from my boss at work to my husband to my father to my best friends. So many people in my life are Taurus moons, and I literally just gulp up that energy. But what's also interesting in this chart for me personally is this 13-degree Sagittarius sun. That is creating an exact sextile to my natal moon, my natal sun, which is 13 degrees of Libra. So I am just feeling very attuned to this chart, if you can't tell. But there are some things we need to discuss, okay? Because even though I took a week off, it does not mean that the astrology took a week off itself. It surely didn't. We have almost an exact opposition between the sun and the retrograding Gemini Mars. But as I mentioned, we are just days away from a full moon in Gemini, of course, because Gemini is the opposite to Sagittarius, and that is where the sun is. So it's a facto, we're going to have a full moon in Gemini coming up, actually in 2 days from now. This moon is also going to be forming a conjunction to that retrograding Mars and Gemini. So this is going to be an extremely layered, full moon experience. Not only do we have the sun and the moon in opposition, but we have the moon and Mars in a conjunction, and Mars, of course, is retrograde. So this is, wow, a lot of really interesting and dynamic energy, because we're activating that mutable energy axis. Sagittarius and Gemini are mutable signs, and so are Virgo and Pisces. And of course, we still got some energy up in Pisces. We have Neptune, and Jupiter looks like is at 29 degrees, about to move into Aries. But for the time of this reading, we have both of those still in the sign of Pisces, neither of which are retrograde anymore. Thank goodness for that. I don't know about you guys, but that Neptune retrograde was really a lot. It was really a lot. I mean, especially happening at the time of the election. We have all, bear witness to political propaganda, and that's not going anywhere. But I would say even in our personal lives, people kind of like lifting the veil on who they really are, maybe exposing some hidden truths about themselves. Definitely the vibe. But as I mentioned, that full moon experience is going to be squaring that activity that's up in Pisces right now, especially Neptune, because it's at 22 degrees. And there are no planets or positions that are active in Virgo right now, but if this is personal, like hitting personally for you, this will be quite an experience. So if you have a Virgo sun, moon, or rising, or a Pisces sun, moon, or rising, outside of the Sagittarius and Gemini, activity, you will be getting squared by this full moon. And that's not chill. It's not chill. The mutable signs are ending the year in a very real way. And I've even seen this in some of my personal consultations with mutable signs, is they're like, I feel like I'm either on the precipice of change or I'm in a position where I have to accept the inevitable. And, really a full moon wants us to release and let go. And so, for all of the fixed signs, the Scorpios, the Taurus, the Aquarius and Leos, we have been in a constant state of flux this year, in a constant state of change, which is not really what fixed energy loves or really thrives in. But the mutable signs, man, this is what they do. They are ready to usher in a new era, a new change. And, that's really nonstop in astrology from here on out. 2023 is going to be a huge year for change and shifting as Pluto moves into Aquarius, as Saturn moves into Pisces. But, again, let's just check in with where we are right now. Saturn is, of course, still in Aquarius. This is creating a trine to Mars in Gemini. We have Chiron in Aries, a stellium still taking place in Taurus, because we've had the North Node and we've had Uranus positioned here. So the moon coming back into that space is creating yet another Taurus stellium, which, my goodness, aren't we tired? I certainly am. I mean, as a Scorpio rising, I don't feel like the Taurus-Scorpio axis has had a moment of chill this year. And even though this full moon is taking place in the mutable signs, that really heavy presence of Uranus and the North Node in that Scorpio-Taurus axis, that's being felt, okay? It's being felt. We are also seeing Venus and Mercury in kind of the later degrees of Sagittarius. To me, the last few weeks have really just kind of been a breath of fresh air when it comes to like idea sharing and, just going with the flow in that way. It's been really, really, really nice. But, again, we have Mercury at 28 degrees of Sag. So very soon we're going to see Mercury ingress into Capricorn. And hint, hint, guess what? We start 2023 in a Mercury retrograde in the sign of Capricorn. Whew. That is a lot. That is a lot of energy. I'm going to get more into the breakdowns of the end of the year as we draw closer, because we still do have the whole rest of this month to, to sit with and experience before we jump ahead. But something to definitely keep in mind, and then based on how this chart is set up, because it is an Aquarius rising, there are really no significant placements and planets, from the 5th to the 9th house in this chart. In the 4th and 10th respectively are Mars and the Sun, but Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio is having a rare moment of nothing really hanging out in those spaces, at least in the most signified portion of astrology. Now, that's not to say if you don't do a little more investigation into other asteroids and things of that nature, you may find those. But from the Sun to Pluto, the North Node, Chiron, South Node, all that is really eased off, more of like the summer and fall months, if you will. So yeah, something to be aware of, is like all of this really dynamic energy is falling into the winter and spring signs. The zodiacal calendar here is really activated, and it makes sense because look at the time that we're in and look at what we're heading into. The fall and the summer, it's not their moment right now. But what is really, really activated is a lot of fire. We have both Sag and Aries being activated. We also have Capricorn and Taurus. The only mutable that's really making its appearance here is Pisces and Gemini, and we have Neptune in Pisces, and we have Mars retrograding through Gemini. So that's just a little bit of a check-in with, what's going on astrologically. This is it's an interesting week with a full moon, with a lot of the other things that we're seeing happening. Again, the full moon is going to be in a conjunction with Mars, which is trining Saturn. So it's like no matter where you look, there is something to pay attention to in this week's chart. again, specifically if you are a mutable sign or, you know, if that falls into your chart anywhere. All right, now let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to the card. As you can see, I have a measly little deck left, so very little. So, you know, what I like to kind of think is when I sit down with these few cards, you know, to do these readings, is to really just focus on, you know, we have covered everything in the exact order that it needed to be covered. So these final cards, these final moments, they feel so like potent to me. They feel so relevant. They feel like they waited for a reason, if that makes sense. All right. I think I'm going to go with this one today. Scorpio, I transform. Scorpio said, excuse me, this is the fixed signs year. Why are we doing so much talking about the mutables? So again, in this particular chart, actually the only Scorpio placement that's happening is a Scorpio midheaven. But dare I say there's just not enough to say about Scorpio. This has been a huge year for the Taurus-Scorpio axis. It's been a big year also for Aquarius and Leo because they cross over that axis and create squares. So at this time in this chart, there are no Scorpio placements, but I can bet that you can look back on this year, whether you go back to Scorpio season or even Taurus or just at some point in time in between that, and you will find that Scorpio has made a huge impact on you this year because that's been the case for many of us. For millennials, we are the Scorpio and Pluto generation, or I should say Pluto and Scorpio generation. I happen to also be a Scorpio rising, and I have a Scorpio Venus, so stellium girl right here with that Scorpio energy. But even if you don't have a lot of personal planets in Scorpio, if you are a millennial or you're right on the brink of being so, then Scorpio has a huge presence within the generational collective, the generational experience, right? They like to say that the Pluto and Scorpio generation are the ones who reveal family secrets. We are the ones who, you know, have dug up all the shit and are exposing it. So Scorpio, obviously it is signified by an actual scorpion, and there's something about the etymology of this animal that I have always found very fascinating. I was listening to the astrology podcast earlier this year, and they had done a series on each of the individual zodiac signs, which I highly recommend, of course, if you're interested in doing a deep dive there. And something that has been really sticking with me about Scorpio is, again, when it comes to the etymology of the animal, scorpions carry a deadly poison within their tail. And this poison is held very carefully and very powerfully. And it is not used against themselves. It is used as a, you know, defense tactic, a mechanism for, you know, preserving themselves and preserving their life. At times it may also, you know, have something to do not only with defenses, but with, you know, simple survival, right? Like eating or whatever else that may be. But within this scorpion sting, you know, there was a comparison that I came across where it was like Scorpio takes an idea, much like it takes that poisonous substance, and it pushes it down, 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 down until it transforms. And both that poison transforms into a very deadly venom, and these ideas transform until they bring forth some sort of transformative, revolutionary change. And that's the interesting thing about Scorpio is it goes deep. This is not a shallow, superficial sign. This is a sign that wants to dig quite literally to the depths of itself and into the earth. I had recently heard a news story about scientists digging into the permafrost of the earth, which is like the layer that stays permanently frozen beneath, you know, beneath many layers. And in this, they are discovering viruses and deadly pathogens that are still very powerful. And I think that what's so interesting about Scorpio and Scorpionic energy, whether we're talking about it personally, generationally, whatever, is that there is an idea that if we just push something down and keep it quiet and bury it, that it will disappear or that it will go away or be forgotten about. And Scorpio really reminds us that that is not true. You can dig deep, 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 deep down, and guess what? All that stuff is still there. All those pathogens are still there. All of that trauma, all of the memories, all of the pain, that is still there. That has not gone anywhere. It's like idle and waiting for its moment. And that's exactly how Scorpio feels, right? Is like Scorpio has, I don't know if patient is the right word, but Scorpio knows that it will get their own, you know? And I think, again, what's really interesting when you think about what's going on in the world and the collective and personal lives is that a lot of people, for the very first time, whether this is within their, you know, entire family, like spanning generations, or if it's just their family of origin, their mother, dad, brother, sisters, whatever, is that truths are coming out. Truths are coming to the surface. And a lot of these truths are ones that have been very much pushed down. But, you know, Scorpio is ruled by the planet Pluto. And the thing about Pluto is it's all about breaking things down into the teeniest, tiniest little things it can possibly do. So let's take compost, for example. Compost is often food scraps or shit, right? And it's covered in earth, it's covered in other, you know, breakdown materials, eggshells, whatever you want to put in there. And these things, they do transform. They get broken down on the molecular level and they change from just junk and trash to incredibly fertile, you know, soil and additives for your soil. And if it wasn't for compost, you wouldn't have the healthy, nurtured roots below the surface, right? So there's this sense of like, well, if we can take this thing and change it, we can turn it into something that is fortifying. We can turn this into something that is, I don't know if healthy is the right word, but supplemental, you know, if that makes sense. This idea that you can take something that is useless and discarded and it can transform into such a healthy component for, you know, your harvest. This is really what Scorpio and Pluto is all about. It doesn't want to bring the chaos and destruction with it for nothing, although I'm not saying it won't. That's a little bit more Uranus, where it's just like, gotcha, you didn't see that coming, did ya? But, you know, Scorpio and Pluto, respectively, are a lot more about, like, let's take this thing and let's turn it into something better, or let's turn it into something more useful. And that process is slow. Okay, I don't know about anybody out there who's ever kept a garden or is familiar with compost, but it's not like you take your scraps and you put it outside and the next morning you have beautiful fertile soil. This takes time. This takes breaking down. And that is why, you know, the Pluto Scorpio generation is taking all of these things, all of these experiences, and in some ways, maybe we are discarding them. Maybe we are getting rid of them. We're saying, nah, this isn't it anymore. But what we're really doing is fortifying for the future, right? It's about, you know, establishing a new way, you know? And again, the fixed signs, Scorpio, Taurus, you know, all these, they're not keen on change the way that mutable signs are. But when you think about Taurus and you think about Scorpio, and you think about what Scorpio does for the benefit of Taurus, right? It's like, well, I'm going to fertilize. I'm going to make this better. And that way, when the time comes for those flowers to start blooming and that beautiful springtime to experience, well, you know, then I'll know that I've really done my job. It almost kind of reminds me a little bit of like planting garlic. You have to plant garlic, you know, in the late fall, and it has to overwinter. And you don't harvest it until, you know, summer. I do think that you can harvest some in the early spring, or maybe late spring rather, but overall, you have to wait a really long time. This is like the earth has to be pregnant with this garlic before you can get an entire bulb. And the patience and the, process that goes along with that is so Scorpionic to me. It is a process. It does take time. Now, for people who have Scorpio ruling personal planets, this can, not always show up as like patience and slow and things of that nature. It can also show up as just like a deep intuition and a deep understanding of what's really going on below the surface, what's really happening there. And this can also be figured out without words being shared or ideas being exchanged. There's a sense with Scorpio. Now, in traditional astrology, Scorpio is ruled by Mars, and it is more of the like dark divine feminine energy around Mars, where Aries is a lot more of that masculine energy. In traditional, that creates a really unique picture around Scorpio. It's like doing the dirty work, doing what needs to be done. In modern astrology, which is certainly a little more in the realm of what I like to study, Scorpio ruled by Pluto is a water sign. And so there's that instinctive knowing. There's that instinctive flow. There's something so interesting about water where it has memory. If you've never looked into this, I cannot suggest it enough. It's so fascinating. But water holds, it holds memory, and not in a way that is, maybe very earthy and practical, but in a way that is more, of the water signs. It's more spiritual. And, there is actual scientific evidence out there that kind of like speaks to this phenomenon of water having a memory. But you got to think, like, when water goes through the cycle, along the way, it starts as one thing, transforms into another. It may pick up and lose debris along the way. There's so much things that's changing in shape and form. And that is also so Scorpio. I know a lot of people are like, how is Scorpio a water sign? And I think that there's a misunderstanding around water, that water is gentle and flowing, and it is. But water can also be like the great rapids. It can also be a force to be reckoned with. Water is powerful. And, that is really something that I connect so much with Scorpio. And not so much, to be honest, with like Pisces and Cancer. To me, that feels a little more of the gentle flow state, where Scorpio, this is like rushing rapids coming at you and changing the shape of the land and, chipping away at all of the rocks and the sediment and shaping a new path forward. That is all Scorpio energy right there. All right, let me bust out my handy dandy little booklet for a little more insight on Scorpio. All right, the quote is from Anne Sexton. Put your ear down close to your soul and listen hard. Ooh. These quotes always hit. What I particularly like about this quote too is that, listening to your soul is really speaking to that memory. You know what I mean? Like, again, whether this is family of origin stuff or family going back, whether it is, whatever it is. It's the idea of like, the answers are very, very deep within. And, there's a process of being patient and listening to receive a lot of that information. I think that's really beautiful. Acknowledging desire and surrendering yourself to the depths will serve you best at this time. Scorpio is one of the most fascinating signs of the zodiac. It is ruled by Pluto, planet of gutters and extremes. It is the sign of sex, money, and passion. It is a powerful sign. Scorpios have a bad reputation for ruthless behavior, which is not deserved. Like the other water signs, Scorpio is emotional, but not in the sympathetic way of Cancer or Pisces. When a Scorpio enters a room, they don't have to say a word for the crowd to notice. They can feel their energy. Their depth and their ability to understand others, all the while not revealing much about themselves, is profound. Scorpios inspire you to tell them your deepest, darkest secrets while revealing none of their own. And it's funny because this is something I say all the time about my consultations is like, you know, people will literally bare their soul to me. They will tell me, like, I don't want to say crazy things because that's not fair. Really, really dark things. And it will be the first time I've ever done a reading for them. It'll be a tarot reading or something. It doesn't have to even be astrology. And the way that I will be able to just like go in and pull out answers, and the way that they will just create a doorway for me to do so, it really shakes me sometimes, because I'm just like, wow, what would the world look like if everybody had this like depth of support and this like ability to just let themselves out of the darkness. When Scorpios feel deeply, they fear the loss of control and will sting when threatened or cornered. Almost always, Scorpios will deliver the last hit. Scorpio does not roll over and play dead. They never forget a slight. People in this sign will make their mark, even if they have to do it alone. When the Scorpio comes up in the reading, you are being tested. You may feel isolated or on your own without much help from others, but it's time to stand on your own and fight the forces against you. You will likely win and come out stronger and happier than before, but it is still a very intense time. There are a number of positive changes with this card. You could soon gain what you've worked so hard for. This card implies karmic issues, even the resurfacing of past life recollections. So many of your relationships at this time will be of karmic nature, and thus be tried as well. Your life may seem like a trial. Matters involving inheritances and money could figure in, such as heirlooms, legacies, and what comes down through family or people that you're tied to, especially those deep from your past. You may have to deal with someone who's plotting some sort of revenge over something that you're not even guilty of. It could also be a time where enemies surface, so it will be wise to protect your reputation. Strong sexual attractions may arise, whether wished for or not. Obsessions are possible. It's wise to not get wrapped up in the intrigues with people that you don't know well or have only known for a short time. Do not attempt to maneuver or manipulate anyone. If romance is in your question, expect it to be transforming and not something that you can leave aside. Your partner may seem a little bit hard to reach right now, and matters could erupt into unexpected passions. If surrounding cards, which we do not have any at this time, it will speak to the situation, basically. In dealing with jobs and careers, expect intensity, restrictions, and demands. Sometimes when this card comes up, it can indicate that you're going through deep self-analysis. You could seek out a professional, such as a therapist, but be careful when it comes to your areas of finances, especially those to do with taxes, property, and shared assets. You could have resounding successes or tremendous losses. Take your chance and stick with your decision. You have the ability to make it work. And, you know, as I said, Scorpio is a really misunderstood sign. You know, it's often, because of that association with Mars, it's often considered like kind of mean and cold and intense and hard to deal with. But, you know, Scorpio is also this very tender, understanding, all accepting. You know, the thing about Scorpio is like, it's not that it wants to be friends with everybody, but it could be friends with anybody. There's like, just, I get it. Yeah, sure. Why not? I've seen that before, or I've not seen it before, but it doesn't freak me out. You know, there's just this like really, the taboos are embraced when it comes to Scorpio. That's really hard to scare a Scorpio off with, you know, with those kinds of topics, because to some degree, Scorpio's like, yeah, like, I get it. I really get it. So some keywords I just want to mention is things dying off, suspicion, seeing into the heart of matters, psychic energy, curses, magic spells, vampire stories, anything Egyptian, being an innocent, being accused, feeling lonely, aloof, singled out, stalkers, past lives. I will say, as a Scorpio Venus, one of my exes has been a stalker for the last almost 15 years of my life. It's not something to play with, and it's really kind of freaky and scary sometimes. So for you at this time, with all of the energy that's going on out there, I do want to also mention, because the North Node is in Taurus, the South Node is in Scorpio. Karmic past life stuff is huge with this placement, with the South Node in Scorpio, where it is right now. So if you are dealing with things of your past, people of your past, feelings, any of that to do, you know, the karmic energy surrounding it can be extremely exhausting. And, you know, the impulsive energy of this mutable full moon, especially synced up to Mars, may want you to just say what you say and like let it out and get it over with. But Scorpio does want to kind of remind you that, you know, once things are out there, you don't get to take them back. You have to deal with them, you have to move forward, but you don't get to take them back. So, Scorpio, I transform. What will you transform this week, my beautiful lovelies? All right, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will be back again next Monday for more. Bye.